Good evening, everyone. I'm calling to order tonight's special study session on economic vitality in Los Gatos. So, Madam Clerk, do you mind doing the roll call?
Thank you and good evening. Councilmember Steve Leonardis.
Here.
Councilmember Marcia Jensen.
Here.
Councilmember Barbara Spector.
Here.
Vice Mayor Rob Rennie.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Mariko Sayoc.
Here. Thank you. So thank you all for your attendance. We definitely welcome your participation tonight. There will be an opportunity for public comment after our guests speak and answer some questions from the council. But as with any other public hearing, if you would like to speak on anything that is not related to economic vitality, you may do so under our verbal communications. I have no cards. Okay, so I think we'll just move ahead. So economic vitality is the subject of today's study session. It's a subject that we've talked about quite a bit over the past 2 years, and we've actually brought forward some policies that are business related. Last year we were successful in reviewing outdoor seating, entertainment, as well as valet parking. But what we thought we should do today is take a step back and gather people that are working on these, the Council Policy Committee, the Commission, the Planning Commission, the Council, as well as our businesses, and just really get a baseline understanding of what are the economic conditions in our town. And we've invited 2 guests. One is stuck in traffic to share their local experiences with, I'm sorry, Cindy, please join us. And so it's an opportunity to hear from our 2 guests as well as any other businesses that would like to participate. Council will ask some questions. I have some preliminary questions to ask of them. And then we'll open it up for comments from the audience that they can then respond to. And then at the end, hopefully we'll have opportunity to just amongst the council share some of the goals that we have with regards to economic vitality. It means different things for many different people. And so I think it's important at the end of the hour to really get an understanding of what does it mean for us as a council so that we have a unified vision moving forward. So as staff and the policy committee, as well as the planning commission, start reviewing and taking a look at these various policies, what's the context that we're reviewing these, and have a real clear understanding of how to move forward. So with that, I will ask our 2 guests to introduce themselves. And then after that, we have a couple of questions just to get the conversation started. So I will let you guys decide.
There we go. Thank you. Thanks, Madam Mayor and Town Council for inviting me and us to provide feedback on these topics. I know most of you, but I guess for those paying attention in the audience, my name is Jim Foley. I'm a 4th generation Los Gaton. I've been around for a while working on various different things in the town. Specifically relevant to tonight's topics, I handle the leasing for a building that my family owns on the corner of North Santa Cruz and Main, 1 through 17 and a half. North Santa Cruz, which has a number of retail shops and restaurants and offices in it. So I can kind of speak a little bit about some of the experience we've had with that building. I'm also one of the partners in Rootstock Wine Bar, and I helped bring that project through the process several years back. I guess 5 years ago, we're about to have our 5-year anniversary. And so I got to experience firsthand opening a business like that in town. I've been involved in a number of other real estate acquisitions and development projects and worked with the town to sort of establish vision and look at different policies and things that would impact development of a property, or what the future would be for the future tenants of a property like that. And I participated in several other committees on the behalf of the town, trying to provide feedback for the general plan update, the North 40 specific plan, and the PD zoning ordinance and policy. So I've tried to remain close to some of these issues for a while and hope could offer a little bit of feedback on some of the questions that I think we're going to talk about, and then field any questions that any of you may have I guess, things that I would have experienced with the town to help guide what you guys are thinking about the policies that you may or may not want to change going forward.
Good evening. I am Cindy Johnson. I'm the Director of Construction with Donahue Schreiber. Madam Mayor, I also want to thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight and share some of our thoughts with the whole group. Let me start again for the benefit of the audience. We are a privately owned REIT, Real Estate Investment Trust, and we own 65 properties in California, Washington, Oregon, and Nevada. We own 2 properties in Los Gatos, Downing Center and Los Gatos Village Square. I've actually only been with the company for a little under 2 years, but we have been in the town for quite a bit longer as an owner of these properties. And I've sat through several CUP hearings of various tenants. I've dealt a lot with Jocelyn on a number of issues as we've re-tenanted our buildings and tried to improve them. Obviously, we've done a lot of work on the Downing Center, and that is going to be an interesting thing to talk about tonight. We just acquired the Los Gatos Village Square a little less than a year ago, and we're still figuring out what opportunities are there, and there's definitely some challenges. So again, thank you. Look forward to this.
Okay, thank you. So we have 3 questions that we want to start off with that I think we've shared with you, and then we'll open it up to the council, and then I'll go ahead and then open it up to public comments. So the first is, what are the 3 biggest challenges businesses face in today's marketplace? And what are 1 or 2 of the most common reasons businesses close their doors?
I don't have a list of 3, but I can say specific to our centers, the biggest challenges are the long CUP process and the traffic mitigation fees when we have an intensity of use. Those are probably the 2. To add a third would probably be signage. Again, I'm speaking specifically to our 2 centers. Because the sign criteria is, especially with Downing Center, was ancient, hardly readable, but to change it would make it be subject to much stronger restrictions. And so we've sort of dealt with that over the years on that project. But by far, the long CUP process and the traffic mitigation, especially for smaller tenants. It's one thing for a national that can come in and spread costs and time, and it's not as much of an impact. But, I know the town feels pretty strongly, or has in the past, about wanting local and smaller business tenants, and by far those are the biggest issues.
Yeah, I would agree with Cindy when you're specifically talking about, I guess, the town and things that are related to bringing a project through or bringing a tenant in. When I looked at the question, I was thinking more competition at large for businesses and things that impact them, I guess, larger outside pressure. So the notes that I had written were, I guess one of the bigger challenges that you would face and that I would see some of our tenants face, or the business that I'm a partner in face, are competition from a lot of these newly built shopping and entertainment districts that seem to be popping up everywhere around Silicon Valley and up and down the peninsula. So, when you talk about the things that Cindy just mentioned as challenges in Los Gatos, and then you look at some of these other places where it seems, potentially easier for businesses to open and be successful, then I would think that that's, a very serious challenge that a lot of the businesses in town are facing. And when I'm talking about other places, I'm talking about all the ones we talk about all the time: Santana Row, Campbell, Cupertino has the new Main Street project. Downtown San Jose is very successful with their San Pedro Market. There's a new one down in Almaden Valley now. Mountain View, Redwood City. There are new places or old places that are revamping themselves. It seemed to be easier to to kind of get a business going. And generally speaking, just the cost of doing business. I mean, the cost of doing business in the state of California is astronomical. So, that's a difficult challenge for everyone to face. So then if you add on layers of complexity in a permitting process or constraints that a business has to face from certain policies in town, it's really just adding to the proverbial red tape.
And so, Council, I want to make sure that as we move from question to question, if you have any specific questions before we move on to the different topic, feel free to raise those as we go along. Councilmember Johnson?
I want to ask a question, Mr. Foley, in regard to your comment regarding newly created downtowns, essentially. And I've been reading a lot about this topic. It's been in articles in various places. And one of the things is that what people are essentially trying to do is mimic or recreate a downtown. And we have a downtown. So my question to you is, how do we maximize our downtown? Because we don't have to build one. So how do we maximize it to give people that kind of experience that they're getting in these newly built places?
Right, it's really interesting. Actually, earlier this afternoon, I read an article put out by NAIOP, which used to be the National Association of Industrial and Office Properties. It's now just referred to as NAIOP because it encompasses much more than that. And it was talking about retail. It was great to see this at about 4 o'clock this afternoon before we were coming today. But what it talked about is just what you described, and how development of some of these new places may be slowing down, and some of the older places are experiencing vision of like rehab or change, right? Which I think is perfect to frame Los Gatos. It's, Silicon Valley might be the exception just because things are going very well in our economy at this time, and so we are and have seen some of that new development as well. But we just need to equal the playing field is kind of what I think. I mean, whatever the policies we can do to adjust to kind of get us out of this, I would refer to it as a deadlock where certain types of uses just aren't able to, or it's very challenging for them to open up in our downtown. Those tend to be, I think, the ones that maybe are finding these other centers to locate in, and they're the ones that are becoming successful in what is energizing those places, and the market is showing demand for them, so it's illustrating what people want. So if we don't have a way to get some of those businesses into the downtown, we've just kind of eliminated ourselves from the overall, I guess, competition for the uses that are the most popular at the time. And I don't know how detailed you guys want to get into it. You go in one by one and look at the different types of uses and what they are, and whether or not we think that they're a fit for the town. And I know we talk about this over and over for years and years, and how big, how much, how dense it is, what is the ratio, all these different things for the different uses. But I think the idea is just that. Take our downtown that has been the model for all these new downtowns everywhere, and make sure that we can welcome those types of businesses the same way that these new developments are welcoming them. I think that's where we've really run into the problem at this time, is we've got some policies that are preventing that from occurring.
Thank you.
Councilmember Spector, and then Vice Mayor Renning.
Thank you. First of all, Ms. Johnson, congratulations, because the town tracks historic sales tax by geographic area, including the Downing Center, and you have been surging up. But my question is, you mentioned a problem with conditional use permits. Was there a specific use in the Downing Center that was expensive, it took a long time to process, that you can use as an example for us?
I think when we're saying not one tenant over another in Downing, it's more compared to other cities where for a use that is not outside the norm, typically you wouldn't have to have a CUP. Every tenant in that center has to have a CUP when they go in, and that's not easy for especially smaller tenants that can't wait that long. And that's just, for the CUP, not for the building permit and so forth. So that makes it harder for us to lease to mom and pops. As you look across our portfolio, we believe pretty strongly, and this is how it's panned out in almost every center we have a mix of nationals and smaller local businesses. And that seems to create the best synergy and success for our centers. And Downing's a great example. But the time it took, and this gets into more detailed things and other layers of complications like today's construction costs. We couldn't do what we did today, as we've discussed it, we don't think, what we did several years ago. It took well over a year to do just the base work we had to do when we bought the center in order to get it ready for the retenanting and success that we have today. It all worked out, the timing of construction costs when that happened versus the rents we were able to get. We got lucky. And we have a number of other centers in lots of different locations that we're looking at now and actually having to pull back on planned projects. We have one in Washington. We have a new one in San Jose that we're struggling with already, and we're just trying to figure out how we can make the economics work for everybody. So that's what I mean when I say it takes too long for the CUP is we don't have to go through that in other communities. So.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Running.
Thank you, Mayor Sack. I think my question is mostly for Mr. Foley. So, as we all know, there's tiers of difficulties for coming into the downtown. Ordinance 2021 makes it most difficult for restaurants who do seem to manage to come in. And then you still need a CUP for a formula retail. So that's a little more difficult than a mom and pop retail. So are your comments about it difficult really about formula retail coming in, or does it also include mom and pop, which don't need the CUP? Is there still too much red tape even when you don't need the CUP?
No, I think, a typical mom and pop, I don't call it a boutique or something like that, where there's one or two. I don't think they face the same challenges, and a lot of the times it's, they're not going to face a change of use fee. We've created a situation where the restaurant and the special, the entitlements given to some of those spaces and properties that have use permits are so cherished and valuable that you'd never see it go the other direction, right? So it's pretty easy for a mom and pop to, get their C of O and go open their business. So I think you're right. It's primarily the formula retail, and I think that has really just been a history of what has been brought forth or things that have been investigated in the town over the years and whether or not they've been faced with resistance. I think there's been a lot of confusion about the formula retail policy and what it really is and how it works. And I think hopefully, some of the word is getting around that, don't forget about Los Gatos. It doesn't, Los Gatos is not closed for business. Sometimes there are opportunities to be able to get a formula retail here, and maybe that's a good thing, and maybe that helps add to the mix. The restaurants one is a very tough one. It kind of parlays into the next question here, but when we have a space for lease, most of the interest comes from restaurants, and that's the one that, unless there's a pre-existing restaurant, you face the biggest challenge to doing so. And I think from what I gather, the way that the internet has impacted the way people shop, it's kind of, I like to say, you used to go shopping and you'd find some place to eat, and now it's like you kind of want to go and eat and be entertained and go to a very special place, and then you might shop while you're there. And so, I don't suggest that we just turn everything into restaurants everywhere downtown, but if you don't have any opportunity for any new restaurants to locate, we're kind of stagnant. And so you look around at some of those other places I mentioned earlier, they're probably 80% restaurants. They're new concepts. They're things we don't have around here. I think it's healthy competition. I don't want to put anybody out of business. It's not the goal. But I think those are the types of things that we need to look at, or the town needs to look at and understand how they work, and just think about the policies that have been in place for a long time and some minor tweaks to those, and I think you'd find maybe make it a little bit easier for some of those things to start to happen. And then to Councilwoman Jensen's point, we revitalized that really great and unique space that Los Gatos has been for a long time. So hopefully that answers.
Yeah, that's a
what you were
good
asking.
answer. Thank you. Very thorough.
Could I add one thing? On the construction side, because your question is about red tape and getting to a certificate of occupancy, the one comment I'd have is a lot of jurisdictions, when you have a change on your plans, will allow you to work with the inspectors with field bulletins, whereas in Los Gatos, if a plan change happens, inspections stop. And you have to wait until it goes through the whole process, which can be 6 to 8 weeks, to get that amended. Now, there's exceptions here and there for smaller things probably, but if you have any kind of significant plan change, that's a huge stopgap.
Okay, and Ms. Johnson, actually, Mr. Foley, that was a great segue into what are the noticeable trends. Your company works not only in Los Gatos, but our regional area. Are there other trends that you're seeing that Mr. Foley hasn't mentioned?
Well, he touched on one, which is internet shopping and how that affects, we've seen certain segments such as, sports, where the Sports Authority and those kinds of businesses that are now going out of business, we think primarily because of internet shopping. Some segments, the big companies will then push, either push the little companies out of business, or the big ones that go under, that could create an opportunity. But that's definitely a trend, and how things are changing. I mean, with our centers, we, as Jim mentioned, it's primarily food or service, things that, you can't get your hair cut on the internet. Those kinds of things are going to stay strong, we think, for the going.
Okay, any questions from council members? So I have two specific questions, one for each of you. So Jim, what do you look for when you're trying to fill a vacancy in downtown? And what do you find that tenants are looking for? You talked a little bit about the restaurants.
We've seen it, when you talk about the La Cañada building on the corner there, we've seen a lot of different types of businesses come through there. We try to be objective with everything that comes through. It's not just what's the best or who can pay the most. It's who's going to be able to be the most successful, who we can have a really long-term relationship with. And we've had many of those. And then alternatively, we've had some, for one reason or another, that suffer and they're not able to stay there. So, I don't know. From a landlord perspective, we want to look for somebody that kind of checks all the boxes, right? They're financially capable. They've got kind of the right business plan. They're a good mix for our building, good mix for the town. We kind of can get behind what they're trying to do. So we take all that into consideration when we're looking for that. And to that extent, over the years, the pool has been somewhat limited. For many years, we didn't really consider, and nobody was bringing to us any opportunities for formula businesses. So in that case, we have to look for your regional business or a mom and pop type store that seems to be set up for success and has creditworthy enough to do a lease and improve the space and move in. And so the formulas have. Some of them were there and they were pre-existing, and for that we were fortunate. Some of them were not, and we weren't able to welcome any new ones. Similar with restaurants, there were a couple of them that were pre-existing, which was great. And this dates back to kind of pre-earthquake and pre some of these policies. And so we have something like Pizza My Heart, which has been wildly successful. But we've had to, turn a number of the other ones away. But then we've got someone like Amore, which is great, and they come in and they seem to be starting up and being successful. But my concern is just, kind of taking the crystal ball out and looking down the road, and it goes back to the question we kind of already discussed, is what happens to all of them, whether they're a mom and pop, or they've just recently moved in. It's a new business, it's an old business that's kind of gone through some of the cycles that we've seen in town, in the economy, you know, shopping or otherwise, or even a national credit tenant reevaluating where their locations are across the country or across the state and seeing who's performing, and just making sure that Los Gatos is setting everybody up for success, no matter who it is, what kind of business it is, or who owns it. And that gets back to, I guess, the more recent question of, you know, people are driving more towards experience and entertainment and a welcoming kind of environment. And I think Ms. Wren used the term placemaking quite a few times over the past couple of years, and kind of those concepts, and making sure that we're setting the town policies up in a way that allows that and doesn't make it more difficult.
Thank you. And then Ms. Johnson, so the question is, we're well aware of Downing Center. What are some of the differences that you find businesses seeking shopping center spaces versus downtown?
Well, I think to Jim's point, you know, the less formula retail is going downtown, so they're pushed out to us. And again, I think I mentioned it earlier, we really try to get that mix, and we feel we need the formula retail as you know, a lot of times it's a destination draw, and then that benefits the mom and pops. Same token, we absolutely look at the long term for any kind of tenant that we go into business with as well. We are also willing to take chances sometimes, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. We recently at Downing, Shuli's Bakery is unfortunately going away. And, you know, it's kind of heartbreaking because they worked so hard. And, you know, to this question, both for us and for them, you know, they were looking at the synergy with, for instance, when Starbucks came in, that, you know, somebody's going to get coffee, but they have a nut allergy, and so they'd be able to go, you know, get their bakery item from the nut allergy, you know, the nut-free, and some gluten-free and that sort of thing. Kumon also, when they came in, was looking at Starbucks and the synergy there, and that's very much what both we and the tenants look for, is to gain from each other.
Council members, any questions? Councilmember Johnson?
I wanted to go back to Ms. Johnson. The first question, you had identified 3 things that were most challenging in this. You talked about the CUP process, but you mentioned also traffic mitigation. Mm-hmm. And I know in the Downing Center, I don't know if you were around and know about it, when Jersey Mike's opened, there was a big issue with the traffic impact mitigation fees.
Absolutely.
And so I'm wondering if you could just expand on what you mean by what problems are created, how you solve them, what happens with different businesses you want to bring in.
Sure. So again, this primarily affects the smaller tenants that don't have as much free cash. And I think, I don't know the details of the dollar amounts with Jersey Mike's, but I know they signed a lease, and the ordinance, I believe, changed after the lease was signed, and all of a sudden they had $150,000 or $200,000 worth of traffic mitigation fees because it was an intensity of use from the prior tenant. Most tenants are not going to be able to afford that. And so that makes it very challenging for us to find that synergistic mix and that balance of tenants. I think in Jersey Mike's case, we were able to negotiate something, and this was before my time, but that's the story I heard, and it worked out well for that tenant. And I hope I don't lose all credibility here. I used to work for CVS, and while the Los Gatos project was not my project, I certainly know the story there, and they actually bought the property and then found out about, $1 million, $2 million worth of traffic mitigation fees. So that lot sits unimproved and has been for several years, and with no end in sight. That's a huge issue. But for my company in particular, the challenge is with smaller tenants and be able to get the right mix.
Okay, and certainly traffic impact mitigation fees, we've heard that from many businesses in town, and that's actually an agenda item later. So if you have specific items you'd love to share with us, I'd welcome that. I'm going to open it up to the public now, since I don't see any other questions from council members. And what I'd ask is let's see how many comments we can get, and then perhaps we can group, and you guys can respond to some of those and elaborate further if you'd like. But I have no cards, so if anyone would like to share anything with us, please do so. Ms. Dorner, come on up.
Hello, Angelia Dorner, proud resident of the Almond Grove. Tagging on to the Jersey Mike's comment, this was something I was going to address later on in an agenda item, but I thought it would make more sense to do now. I think something that is just, prevalent throughout all the things I've been watching over the last several years is inconsistent application and understanding of the various rules and fees. No accountability when things are not done properly or if things have to change and businesses are caught off guard with some of these changes. Specifically talking about Jersey Mike's, that was back in the summer of 14, and the traffic mitigation fees for that particular small submarine shop started at $179,000. Then it was recalculated by our traffic engineering people to $78,000. Then it was recalculated again by our engineering people to $39,000. And there was confusion that was when the change, the increase in traffic mitigation fees occurred and got rid of discounting. But the variability over a period of 3 to 4 months, just trying to figure out what should be charged, was just crazy to try to figure out. It ended up at the end of the day where they paid about $10,000 less some appeal fees and other things, which he was able to deal with. If you go to just this last year and you compare that to what occurred with SoulCycle, you've got SoulCycle, which consolidated 4 separate retail spaces, which I thought we did not want or like to do downtown. We wanted to keep these smaller retail spaces because it's impossible to go back into small spaces compared to big spaces. 57 cycles, 3 instructors, 60 people, hourly classes. They paid 0 in traffic impact fees. And the traffic impact form simply said it's a specialty retail shop and the 4 places used to be specialty retail, so there is no change in traffic, anticipated traffic. I mean, it was absolutely nonsensical. So I just really don't think things are applied properly, are understood properly. I have no idea how that went through a review process and did not get considered for a traffic impact fee of some kind, knowing that there's 60 people hourly that are going to be going through downtown, compared to a 24-seat sub shop, which ended up paying what they did. So, the other thing with our seating and that type of thing, especially downtown, this attitude of, well, we're not following the rules anyway, so why have them? That's not right either. So whatever we end up doing, it needs to be a clear understanding, clearly documented, clearly understood by the staff as well as online, and accountability for reviewing what actually ends up getting done at the end of the day. Thank you.
Ms. Dorner, any questions? Okay, Mr. Holtzel?
Good evening, Council, and congratulations, Mariko, to the first time I see you in the chair. I'm Alex Holt. I'm the owner of Holt's Restaurant and also the president of the Los Gatos Chamber of Commerce and also the head of the Los Gatos Hospitality Association. I just want to share a couple of quick things about when I came to the United States, got married, and then decided to open a restaurant. The amount of hoops and problems and difficulties that I ran into trying to figure out how to do it was insane. And I afterwards learned that Los Gatos is extreme, and the reputation that our town has is what we need to change. The commercial brokers, the reputation amongst business people, they don't want to come here because it's too long, too expensive, too difficult. And that is what we need to change. That is my number one goal as the chamber president this year, to help us all work together to make the instructions clearer, make it easier, An example for my business, I pay $250,000 in rent. I am not allowed to put a little banner when I have a special event. Let's say New Year's Eve, I want to have a menu and I want to say whatever. That's crazy. And then you go down the street and there's all these A signs and all these signs everywhere and no one says anything. But every time I put up a banner, someone's there with a little sticky thing and complaining and threatening me with fines, and it's just not fair. So, like, get rid of the rules, simplify things, and make it easier to do business. Business owners will do everything in their power to be successful because it's what's going to pay their bills. We're not rich people. We're hardworking, and we are in need to be profitable to pay our bills at home. So I really encourage us all to work together to find solutions, not just talking about the problems, finding solutions and actually make things happen. Because in politics, as we all know, there's a lot of subcommittees and agendas and discussions, but very little happen. I think if we come together and actually work as a group, like all of us come together and team up and actually make change, like build that parking garage instead of talking about it, get things to happen, and we can only do that if we all work together.
Thank you, Mr. Holt. Any questions? Okay, thank you. Sandy Decker.
Good evening and congratulations, Mariko. I'm having a little trouble understanding where we're going with this. I'm a little, very troubled, I think, with our expert panel. I think you're lovely people, but the point is we have two realtor developers. Where's the merchant who, Marnie Bovetto, for instance, who is leaving after 25, almost 30 years of service to this town at the Los Gatos Company, who's lived through all of the changes when everything happens to break or she needs help or someone breaks a window or whatever. There's all kinds of things this woman has gone through for 25 years, along with, of course, the rent increases and the TI being done by the renter because that landlord who's constantly adding to the rental cost is not doing the TI either. So there's a lot that needs to be talked about by people that would be who I think run your businesses in this town. We've got some pretty basic things here. There's not a parking place downtown right now, not one. We drove downtown, we made the turn on Main Street, and there's not one. That is nighttime. That is restaurants. That is people driving around, and whether they're going to keep going or take it off and go to Campbell, who knows? But it's restaurants. And without CUPs to do something about that, either a CUP to add to our revenue so we can build that garage that we have been promising, and we take some of that pressure off. If you continue to let us be cool and continue, if you think this is the answer, of restaurants that aren't open during the day, we're another Saratoga in a matter of years. So we know that's not the answer. But I don't know how many of you took a look at what is the answer, I think, and it's in today's Mercury, and it's Amazon brick and mortar. You walk in the store, you scan your Amazon card, you pick up what you want out of the store, you pay taxes to that town, and you walk away with what you want because people still want to see. We know that happens. We don't have a community without a downtown. We have got to start thinking as a town of being proactive. Are we out there? Are we actually looking? Are we networking with people to fill our big restaurant downtown, in Old Town? It bothers me so much to walk over there and see the California Cafe still not occupied. Another thing is that, Mr. Foley, I don't know if you're involved in this or not, but the McCarthy South Cycle situation that's going on in the 4 storefronts is now bordered up with a white plywood structure that just speaks to this town as being vacant. We need signs that say we're working at these things and we're doing something to stay viable. Okay? I'll leave these here.
Any questions for Ms. Decker? Quick question of staff. California Cafe, my understanding is a restaurant is going in there to...
Yes, that's correct.
Do you have an update on when that is planned to open and be on? No?
We don't. They're going through all of their tenant improvements.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Catherine Summers?
Good evening, Council. Congratulations, Mariko. So my name is Catherine Summers. I'm the Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce, and I would like to just support what all the people before me have talked about. As the Executive Director of the Chamber of Commerce, I've only been there for about 6 months. Almost all of the phone calls I get from our merchants in town is, how can I get through the process better? What does my CUP mean? What does my, how can I rent space here? And so it's on a weekly basis that I call Monica and ask about every individual space and how they have different CUPs and different rules and regulations. I can't even keep up with it. And then we start talking about the traffic mitigation plans, and I can't even begin to think of that either. So I do agree with what some of the people said before me. I think there needs to be, as the council, I think it is your responsibility with the town staff to simplify some of those rules and regulations. That would be my first one. Second, I do think that Los Gatos is a unique gem, as I call it. And our mom and pop shops really, I know we call them mom and pop shops, but it's those little stores that make us unique and a place where people want to come and a destination. And I think we need to embrace that as opposed to just falling into that formula of restaurants. And I do appreciate what you're saying because I see that working around, and I've done quite a lot of research. But I think instead of doing that, we're an all-day community. And in fact, Barbara Spector has brought this up before, that some of those other places you can go and it's just after 5 and it's really vibrant and happening. But I think we need to market ourselves as a place that you can come and you can start at 6 o'clock in the morning and you can have great coffee and you can walk the trails and then you can shop at the great boutiques. And so I think we need to look a little more closely at that, despite even what's going on the internet, because I don't think you can buy some of the things that our shops sell on the internet. I also wanted to bring up, I'm sorry, I'm not picking on you, but the formula stores. While the formula stores are great, and I do think we could certainly have a few more of them, and I know they do pay the rent that the landlords want, the formula stores rarely participate in any of the civic activities that we have. And it's really sad. I walk in there daily asking, can you participate in the girls' night out? Can you participate in the holiday stroll? And it's such a rigor, it's so much that they have to go through to get corporate to sign off on anything. It really takes away from the charm of the town. Lastly, I wanted to talk about banners, just so that I put the seed in your head. We have a holiday stroll this weekend, and it would be my dream come true if I could hang a holiday stroll banner over Los Gatos Boulevard or Santa Cruz Avenue to let everybody, all the residents, I think we could get a crowd like we had at the parade to come down and celebrate if we could have banners and have a little more advertising.
You have a question, Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor Sack. When you say embrace the small business boutiques, what do you mean by embrace? Stop kicking them out or do something more than we're doing now?
So if I can elaborate on that, I love that we have 2 landlords here, I think. I think there, at some point this year, needs to be a real discussion with the landlords. And I don't really understand, I might be speaking out of turn here, but I think all of us need to come together, a little bit what Alex said, and really decide what we want this town to be and how to market it as a destination for our own and for people from out of town. And I think that is going to require some of the landlords to maybe give a little and get, and really look at, do they really have to, and this is some hearsay, and I don't know if everything I hear is necessarily true, but is it that a restaurant, is the rent really $25,000 or sometimes $27,000 and not a month? And it's not only $27,000 a month, but then the requirement of the landlord is that the restaurant or the new restaurant coming in has to do all the repairs and the maintenance on the condition that the building is in. That is almost impossible for a new tenant to fulfill that requirement. And so therefore, I think you do turn a lot of people away. I don't know. I haven't met that many landlords. I've met a few, and I've kind of spoken how I feel. But I think it would just be good to try to get them all together. And I think you could probably do that with the authority that you have in the town. And I think we could get together and really kind of talk about it. Businesses, Chamber of Commerce, council, and residents alike.
Okay. Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. Interesting presentation, so thank you. Let me ask you, there have been a lot of ideas and suggestions that have been brought forward this evening. Do you think, and for example, let's use your banner across Santa Cruz Avenue, or banners in general. Do you think it would be possible for the chamber to confer and say, these are the things that we as businesses would like, and maybe there's 15 of them, and then you prioritize the top 3? I'm a process person. Boring, but that's how it is. Is it something that you could see the chamber doing and contributing?
Yes.
Thank you. And when will we have that report? Thanks a lot.
And actually, Ms. Summers, before you leave, and I'm going to throw this out to everyone because we're at 15 minutes before we have to end. In January, we're going to do a priority setting, and it would be helpful, as Ms. Spector said, to confer and help us prioritize how we're going to approach all these different policies. We have limited resources, but how can we get the most out of what we're going to do next? I think that's something that we are continually asking ourselves. And so some assistance from the chamber, the landlords, to the merchants is always appreciated. Okay.
I mean, from what I found in the 6 months is that we sort of all work in our individual silos, and that very rarely do we come together. And I think probably this is the location where we could get most people to come together to talk about those things, with a set agenda of the items, and I could help you identify those items for sure, what we could put.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Ed Rathman.
Council members, Mayor, I just have some random thoughts because I wasn't really prepared to speak. I just got back from a trip from Rockland and Roseville, and driving through that area, there's 1 million shopping malls, all brand new, all seem to be full, and all have, and they're not full of restaurants. They're full of, I don't know if they're formula retail or local or not, but for some reason, Rockland and Roseville seems to fill up their centers. I would say for the downtown, I'm in favor of more formula retail. I mean, the landlords have to be able to rent their spaces. But, I don't know if I don't know what the level is, 50-50 or 60-40 or whatever. Secondly, I think the downtown could, here's an idea that I haven't thrown out before. The downtown could be looked at as, if you go to a shopping center like the Prune Yard or something, the owners control the types of restaurants. They don't allow 2 pizza places. They don't allow 2 hamburger places or 2 wine bars or whatever. And I think the downtown corridor could be looked at as a mall, and I think it's appropriate to have CUPs and control the kind of restaurants that come in. Otherwise, it'll be, a Darwinian free-for-all. And, as some people said, that's all the calls they get. All we're going to have is restaurants. So I think it's appropriate to control through CUPs what kind of restaurants we have and how many. And, if you're not careful, it's going to be all restaurants. And then finally, the obvious thing is parking. We have to have more parking. And we can't compete against ourselves. Campbell clearly hurt the downtown. I've been around for a long time. Santana Row clearly hurt the downtown. You can't allow the North 40 to hurt the downtown. There has to be controls on restaurants and the amount of small retail. It's just so patently obvious that, that has to be controlled. I guess that's it. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rathman. Any questions? Okay. Michael Kane.
Michael Kane, 15466 Los Gatos Boulevard. As Ed just said, and as many speakers have said, I didn't intend to speak tonight, but I also didn't know that my landlord was going to be here tonight. And it was brought up that we have landlords and developers at the table and not one tenant. And I would think that there's 100 more tenants in town than there are landlords. And maybe some tenant representation would have been appropriate. I'll focus that tenant view on one consideration. It would be lovely if Economic Vitality could provide a dispute resolution center or specific assistance with relocation. In my building at the Village Square, there are 3 vacancies on the 2nd floor, and there's about to be another one. One of the tenants told me that his or her lease was up and that the landlord had doubled the rent. I heard that from another tenant who left the location and heard rumors to that effect from another tenant. The thing about being a tenant is you have no power. You don't like it, leave. And there's a lot of silly issues that go on with things that we need, things that would encourage us to stay, as opposed to things that say, I don't care if you leave. And I'd like some advocacy from the town instead of hiring a lawyer. No offense, Mr. Schultz, but that's an expensive process. If Economic Vitality could get the parties at a table. I've got an air conditioner on the roof. It broke, and it's also a heater. It broke in the middle of the winter. We're freezing in there. And the landlord, not you, said, go fix it, it's yours. What do you mean it's mine? Oh, anything outside the space is your responsibility. We have lawyers who say, I said, you're out of your mind. But I'll tell you what, I'll buy a new air conditioner, and when I leave, I'll throw it off the roof because it's mine. I mean, that's the kind of, my business entered its 35th year of service and performance on Sunday. So I've been a tenant for 35 years. And you can run a business and do a good job, but you also feel very powerless about conditions and circumstances. The mystery of, I pay rent, but I also pay what? CAM, the mystery of CAMs. I have no idea what a CAM is, nor does anybody else I know what a CAM is. But that can jack the rent 3%, 4%, 5%. I'd like some remedy, some solution, an avenue, a resolution from Economic Vitality for the tenants to help us communicate, hear both sides of the story, and give suggestions other than just get out if you don't like the doubling in rent. Doubling of rent, rent control. I know we can't do that. I don't think we can do that. But we ought to have something somewhere that says enough is enough. Doubling the rent is not helping downtown. Double the rent is not helping Los Gatos Boulevard. And Sandy stole most of my thunder on representation. But I share the Pearl S. Buck view of bad landlords and wish I didn't.
Okay, thank you. So, we are at 6:53, and we do have a hearing coming up. I have 2 more speaker cards, and so I'm going to go ahead and call the 2. And then to our guests, there's no really opportunity for wrap-up, but if there are any further thoughts that you'd like to share, please consult with Monica Wren. And we clearly would like to continue this conversation. Maria Risto?
Hi, I'll keep it really brief. There's a couple things. I just think downtown is dying for teen clothing. There's a lot of teenagers here. They wouldn't have to drive places. When American Apparel was turned down several years ago, I think we lost an opportunity. My daughter does not shop online, and so we have to go to the mall all the time, and it's the only thing I shop for outside of town. So I don't know if there's policies or prohibitions or if teen clothing can't pay the rents downtown, but I look at Old Town, which is essentially 99% formula retail, and I don't understand why if we essentially have a formula retail mall downtown, it's not a place where kids could walk to and go shopping. In terms of the signage, Alex Holt brought up a great point. I mean, I know in theory we can't have A-frames downtown. I'm not going to call and report that to the code compliance officer. We've got them around. They're not really that horrible, or if someone decides they're horrible, we need to sweep them all up. But you don't let a couple businesses break the rules and then crack down on others. So I think we need to refresh some of those rules. I was part of a group of people that pushed for the new traffic mitigation fee structure. There's always unintended consequences. At that point, we had a lot of traffic mitigations that were unfunded. So when somebody does intensify traffic or when a development comes in and there's more traffic, there are impacts, and our town cannot afford to pay those impacts. At the moment, I think we have $47 million in unfunded traffic mitigations. But we have to make a decision. Maybe we don't want 100% of all the cars to count, and maybe we look at where the discount should be, and maybe we've swung too far. But we have to say that with eyes open and say, okay, there are going to be impacts. Who's going to pay for it? The tenant maybe doesn't have to, but the town is going to have to. So those are a few of the issues, and the rest I can put in writing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Risto. Any questions? Okay, and our last speaker and card for tonight is Edward Morimoto.
Thank you, Ed Morimoto, 460 Monterey Avenue. First of all, thank you to the council staff and tonight's speakers for putting the session on. I think it's great. And really, I just wanted to tee up one question. With all the discussion about the things that the town needs, when I'm, for once in the majority camp, that there are plenty of things we need, like parking for the downtown and improvements for our roads and so on and so forth. The question of how are we going to pay for that always comes up. I recall from the discussions that were around whether or not Soul Cycle should be allowed to move into the downtown, and maybe not the primary discussion, but a secondary discussion was the shifting from a sales tax generating business to a non-sales tax generating business was one of the topics of discussion. So I guess my question to the council or request is, to what extent have we explored or thought about applying some sort of taxation or fees to what might be considered retail service businesses? Of course, California law does not accommodate a sales tax on service businesses. That's different from some other states in the country. For example, New York, where Soul Cycle comes from, I believe, has a 4.5% sales tax on services. However, it would seem like that there were other avenues that the town could do that to at least get those businesses to contribute to the town in a way that is proportionate to kind of the burden that it puts on the town as far as traffic and parking and so on and so forth. So I thought I would just tee that up as something to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. And any questions for Mr. Morimoto? So, unfortunately, the good news is we had a lot of interest and we had a lot of comments that were shared. And what I'd like to do as for next steps is we will sit down with Ms. Wren, our Economic Vitality Manager, go through this. I mean, just capturing tonight, we've heard about simplification of CUP mechanisms, the traffic impact mitigation fees, signage, applicability of how we're enforcing our rules, parking, and a possible look at how we can perhaps charge on service businesses. These are issues that we will bring back to the policy committee that we will then work on, and it'll, as the policy committee, those are public hearings, those go up to the planning commission and ultimately to council. And for those that have shared their thoughts and their concerns, I just ask you to keep engaged. We will try and push this out as much as possible so that as we start to look at which policies to work on, we definitely need some assistance and guidance on how to be more effective in making sure the intent of what we're trying to do of simplification is really materialized next year. So with that, I thank our guests, Mr. Foley and Ms. Johnson. Thank you so much. And again, if you have anything further you'd like to share with us, please forward those all to Ms. Wren and to Ms. Pravetti. Thank you. And we will begin our council meeting, our official public hearing, in 5 minutes.